I'm Victoria Pearson, but you can call me V, and this week I made some bread. And everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong when I was making this bread. My scales are missing, couldn't find a grater. Like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. But yet the bread still turned out all right. And so I thought I'd share the recipe with you because it's pretty much foolproof. Also, if you've watched my channel for a long time, you know that I've got a really bad shoulder injury. And so kneading bread for ages and ages was never going to work for me. This is a really, really low labour, easy bread. So you only have to do about a combined 40 seconds of kneading altogether. And so it's really, really easy on your joints and your muscles. So have a watch. I did this the other day, so you're going to see me quick change and look awful because I was not feeling well when I did this. But I made the bread and I wanted to show it to you. I decided that I wanted to bake bread today, and then halfway through, after I'd got all the ingredients, set everything up, I realised I don't have scales, and so that's going to be awkward. So I attempted to convert 2 tablespoons for my flour instead, and it looks like far too much flour. This is what 50 tablespoons of flour looks like, but this is a 1.5 gram bag of flour that I've just opened, and that really does look like I've used an entire kilogram. Do I start measuring again? I'm so glad that I checked that, because that is actually 50.6-ish tablespoons of flour, and this is how much extra I had. So this would have all gone horribly wrong. I'm really glad that I counted it out again. I'm guessing I must have lost count the first time, and that's why I was originally planning on doing this bit off camera. So these are the ingredients for what is the easiest crusty bread recipe that I've ever made. It only takes about 2 hours to make, and a lot of that is just resting the dough. So you've got lots and lots of time to yourself in it, and it's very quick compared to a lot of bread recipes. There's no overnight part or whatever. So we've got 400 grams of strong white flour, which I worked out is the equivalent of 50.66 tablespoons. Then I've also got here 125 grams of whole wheat or rye flour. I'm using whole wheat, and that worked out about 16 2/3 tablespoons. We're going to get 25 grams of fat, which can be butter, oil, fat from your Sunday roast, if you're into that sort of thing, whatever you want. And then some very hot water for our yeast. We have got 2 sachets of instant dry yeast, and we're going to need 2 tablespoons of malt vinegar. Just checking that I'd got that right, and it wasn't supposed to be teaspoons. 2 tablespoons of malt vinegar, about 1.25 teaspoons of salt, and 1 raw potato that I'm going to scrub in a second, and then we're going to grate, but we're going to leave the skin on. In case you're wondering why my mug tree has no mugs on it, I live with teenagers. They're all in their room. Do you know, every time I cook on this channel, I tell you that I'm not going to be cooking on this channel anymore because it's too much of a hassle to work out my camera angles. So for that reason, for most of this recipe, you are not going to see me. You're going to be looking at the bowls, because otherwise I have to bend like this to be able to be seen at the same time as my bowls, and it's hurting my back. So come on in and see the bread itself as we make it. So step 1 is to put all of your flours into one bowl. So that's nice and easy. Make sure that's so that you can see it. I have actually printed out my recipe because I normally keep it on my phone, but this is quite an old recipe. It comes from my great auntie, my late great auntie. I got a load of her recipes and I put them all together in a little book for my children and myself. And so, yeah, now I am going to boil the kettle for a minute, just because it says it wants very hot water. And so I figure that will heat it up quite quickly. And we need 300 ml of that, so I'm going to have to find something to measure that with. Get more adventures in measuring. This has only got 200 and 400 ml written on it, but I'm just going to sort of eyeball it halfway between the two. That's about right. Right, so first things first is put the flours and the salt into a large bowl. I've got 1.5 teaspoons of salt is what I'm supposed to be putting in here. I am actually using proper little measuring spoons just to try and make this a bit less of a disaster I feel like the measuring spoon teaspoons are much bigger than the teaspoons that I use for a cup of tea, but never mind. Right, there's one of them. And I think we've even got a half teaspoon on here somewhere. There we go. Do the half teaspoon as well. Seems like a lot of salt, but I don't think it's a very salty bread once it's been made. So flours and salt in a bowl, mix them up with your hands. My hands are clean, don't panic. And then it is putting the fat in and rubbing it in. You can use butter for this, you can use oil, whatever you want really. I'm torn between using butter and oil at the moment. Let's have a look. Okay, I looked it up and 25 grams of butter is about a tablespoon. That is possibly a little much, but that'll be fine. It'll just be a bit richer. And then we are just going to rub it into each other. Now, my nails are actually a little bit long for baking today, but I didn't have time to take them down and I don't have any gloves, so you're just going to have to get grossed out by it being under my nails. Don't worry, it's going to gross me out too, but we can wash our hands, that's fine. So what we're doing is we're picking up the butter and we're just rubbing the flour into it. It's super easy, just like the same as if you were making a crumble or a pastry, something like that. You're just going to rub it in and lift it up and let it sort of drop back down as you rub, so that you get lots of air into there and no clumps. So that's what we're doing, is just making sure that that flour is well mixed in, and so there's no big clumps of butter in the middle of it. That rubbed in very, very quickly because I was using margarine. If you're using normal butter, then especially if it's been in the fridge, it might take a little while to sort of rub out into breadcrumby type things. But very, very soon you will have just this consistency that's just kind of the same as flour really, but maybe ever so slightly more damp. Once that's rubbed in, you're going to need another bowl because we're going to start adding some other ingredients together. One of the ingredients that we're going to add in next is the potato. And so you're going to take this, you're going to wash and scrub it, and then we're going to grate it. I've got at least 2 graters in this house and I cannot find either of them. I have a feeling that one of them might have gone to university with my daughter. The other one might have been being used to make distressed jeans in my teenager's room. And so I'm going to have to use a freaking nutmeg grater. This is disaster bread. This is ridiculous. This will be much quicker for you if you don't have a missing cheese grater. Might have actually been quicker for me to drive to the supermarket and buy a new one than trying to do this on this blooming nutmeg grater. Garlic grater? I don't know. Whatever it is, it isn't great. At least I amuse myself. So once you have grated your potato, it will look like a potatoey yucky mess. You want about 175 grams of potato apparently. I have never noticed that there has been a measurement for the potato on this recipe before. I've made it loads of times. I've only ever just put 1 potato in. So I reckon 1 potato will be fine. So once you have got your potato washed but not peeled and grated into a separate bowl, you are going to mix in the warm water, the vinegar and the yeast. Vinegar, how much vinegar did it say it wanted? It's malt vinegar you want, not white vinegar. You want the type that you get from the chippy. And this is going to smell horrid, but I promise you it's fine. We need 2 tablespoons of malt vinegar. I'll get my trusty measuring spoon out again, because even though I think that they look like the wrong sort of sizes, it's better to keep them consistent anyway. Not sure what effect vinegar will have on silver spoons, but never mind. So 1 tablespoon and then another tablespoon. And it smells like a chip shop in here. That's disgusting. And then, yeah, we're going to stir the water in last. I think we're going to pop my 2 sachets of yeast in there, which I of course am unable to open because this is disaster bread. Don't try that at home. Now I was going to say that this bread can be made vegan. Just make sure that you use oil instead of butter. But I don't actually know if vegans consider yeast to be vegan. I'm vegetarian and I consider it to be vegetarian, even though it is technically a living thing, because it's not at all bothered by passing through your digestive tract, and so I don't see why it would mind. It's just having a little holiday in your body. But yeah, so my hot water is no longer boiling hot, it's just hot because I left it out for a little while, and we're just going to mix this into a disgusting mess. Look at that, that's nasty. And you might be able to see the bubbles coming up already. That is because of the yeast. It's showing me that my yeast is still alive, which is great because I only bought it the other day, so I'd be kind of annoyed if it wasn't. Making sure that we've got all the grated potato in there. And then we're just going to pour this disgusting glop into our nice flour. Now I like to make a little well in the middle before I pull it in. So we're going to pour that in there. And then we're going to mix it until it turns into a sort of sticky, icky dough. I don't like to use my hands for this bit because it's gross. But you can if you want to. It wouldn't matter. If you're doing it with children or something, they like getting messy, don't they? So they'll enjoy getting their hands in the glop. But I do not. So I'm just going to mix it with this wooden spoon. I'm considering that I've done this with tablespoons and eyeballing my water and stuff. It's coming together quite nicely. I was very worried that I'd got the amount of flour wrong because I had to do maths to work it out. I'm not the most maths brained person, which is probably why I'm not the best chef. It's a very sticky dough now, but it is a sort of dough. Ugh, ugh, ugh. Next step for me is going to be wash my hands. But after you've washed your hands, I'm going to put a little bit of cooking oil on them so that the dough won't stick to your hands when you're kneading it. So we're going to oil our hands up first. Ooh, too much, but that's okay. We can drip it on the counter because the next thing that we're going to do after we've oiled up our hands is also oil up the counter a little bit. Now, quite often you will use flour to stop things sticking from the counter, but we don't want to add any more extra flour onto this. So I'm just going to oil up my countertop and then plop my dough onto there. Grim. It doesn't smell nice at the moment, but it'll be lovely when it's finished, I promise you. So put all of our gloopy dough there. Doesn't that look appetizing to you? And then we're going to just knead it for a little while. That'll help mix up these last bits of flour in and get a good mix going. Now we only actually, it says on here, have to knead it for 20 seconds or 10 seconds. You can't really overwork bread, but I'm putting a bit more of this on because it's really sticking to my hands already. You can't really overwork bread, but this particular bread doesn't need a lot of working. Now, if you've never kneaded bread before, basically all you're doing is taking out all your anger on it. So you're going to punch it, you're going to grab it and pull it over, you're going to punch it again, you're going to slam it down onto the counter, and you're just really beating it up. What that does is something to the gluten proteins that helps your bread just come out all stretchy and soft and nice. This bit does get really messy, especially on the first lot of kneading. So you can always put more oil, more flour, whatever you need to get it unstuck from your countertop. Look at that, nasty. Right, that has got to have been more than 10 seconds. I did not time it, but it should be. And so what we're going to do, after we've done that for the 10 seconds, is we're going to plop it back in the bowl it came out of. You can add extra gloop onto it as well. Ugh. And then we're going to cover it over with a clean tea towel. And we're going to leave that for about 10 minutes. Now your dough does want to be somewhere fairly warm to rise, so if your kitchen isn't very warm, move it to somewhere where it is. Put it in the airing cupboard even, but you just need to leave that for 10 minutes. Now if you get distracted and end up leaving this for longer than 10 minutes, nothing bad is going to happen. It's not going to collapse or anything like that, so it's absolutely fine. Leave it. Just leave it for a minimum of 10 minutes. But if you end up leaving it overnight because you forgot about it, it will forgive you for it. Open up the counter so it doesn't stick too bad. I'm going to plop the dough out. Plop. And then I'm going to oil my hands again so it doesn't stick too badly to my hands. Ooh, a horrible noise. And then we're going to knead it again for 10 to 20 seconds, it says. Do you see how it isn't sticking as bad this time? It's sort of keeping its shape a lot happier. It's very wet still. You can probably hear it squelching. But it's not as sticky anymore. Now I've done that for, I think, about 20 seconds. And we're going to pop it back in there for another 10 minutes. Covering back up. Right, last time. This is our third go at plopping out the dough. Please plop out. It's doing it just very slowly. Okay, don't plop out. I will scoop you out. Oh, it's still quite sticky. So, dough out. Knead for 10 seconds again, and then put it back in for another 10 minutes. That's all we're going to do. Now, if you are at this stage and you're thinking this still smells really vinegary and I can't imagine it being appetizing, don't worry, when it's cooked, it's not going to smell vinegary at all. Back in the bowl, covered back up for 10 more minutes. And then whilst you're doing that, you can get a tray and dust it with some flour, because that's what we're going to cook the bread on. I suppose in theory you could use a loaf tin. My loaf tin's quite small and this comes out quite big, but you can also shape it into rolls instead of one big loaf if you would prefer. We're going to come back in 10 minutes, shape that on there, and then we're going to leave it for half an hour before we put it in the oven. It's been another 10 minutes now. Well, it's been a little bit longer actually. I got distracted, but we've left it for another while, another 10 minutes, and it is still quite sticky in the bowl. But we're going to get it out of there. Oh, that is not a sensory experience I enjoy. And then we're going to sort of form it into a little ball on a floured doodad. And we're going to put it seam side down. And then with our clean tea towel, again, we're going to cover this over and leave it in a warm place for between 20 and 30 minutes is what it says on the instructions. I'm probably going to leave it ever so slightly longer than that because I have to do the school run and I started this too late really. So we're going to leave that there for about half an hour. So when that has finished resting for about half an hour, or a little bit longer, if like me, you run off on the school run, you're going to get yourself a deep pan. This one, you can see it's rusty and manky, but that is because we do not use this for food anymore. It was a wedding present we had it for ages. I didn't want to throw it out, so I use it for paint palettes and stuff like that. But it is clean, despite being rusty. I'm not going to put any food in that though, because obviously you can't put food into a rusty tin. I'm just going to fill that with hot water, put that on the very bottom shelf of my oven, and then my bread will go on a pan on the next shelf up, and that Steam from that water is what's going to make the top of the bread really crusty and nice. Now that has been on my oven at 200 degrees because I'm fan assisted, so 220 if you're not fan assisted, which I think is gas mark about 7. That's been in there for about 40 minutes now. You can hear that it sounds quite hollow, looks golden brown. I should have cut a big cross on the top just for aesthetics, but I think it looks pretty good. So I hope that you enjoyed watching my absolute chaos while I was baking and counting out 50 tablespoons of flour to make it for you. My kitchen was a right mess by the time I had finished as well. I will put the recipe for it in the description. Like I said, it was my late auntie's recipe, or rather it was written down within my late auntie's recipes. But I don't know if she's taken it from a recipe book or if she developed it herself or what. I just know that it is the easiest crusty bread rolls that I've ever made. Join me on Monday for my next vlog. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be talking about or doing. It's probably something chaotic again. Maybe you can't wait until then to see me again. I will be here every single morning in your shorts, taking a great big deep breath, letting you know what I'm grateful for that day. Sometimes I'm letting you know what's challenging me that day because it's been a challenging year. And I'm also here on a Witchy Wednesday doing an intuitive tarot card reading for you as well. Till then, you have yourself a magical week.